Hello all, it's Ellie and welcome to my channel. This is my first video of 2020. Happy New Year, hope you had a good Christmas, hope you had a great holiday, whatever you celebrate. Yeah, hope you had a good holiday. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Subscribe, join the ride. It's gonna be a fun year. Anyway, for today's video I will be talking about the Oakland County Child Killer. Now, if you don't know what this case is, it is the case of 4 young children that were murdered. It happened from 1976 to March 1977. They were kidnapped and murdered in Oakland County, Michigan. Before their bodies were discovered, they were held captive and then they were murdered. Their bodies were all kind of found in plain sight on like the side of the road. There was a very particular way on the way the killer would present them. These murders became the largest US investigation at that time, and the murderer was actually never found, leading this case to be and remain unsolved to this day. The murderer in this case was known as the Oakland County Child Killer. Oh, also, yeah, if my hair looks greasy, it's greasy. Let's get on with the video. The first victim of these murders was a Mark Stebbing. He was a 12-year-old boy that lived in Fairdale, Michigan. He disappeared after leaving the American Legion Hall as he went home to go watch some television. This was on Sunday the 15th of February 1976. When he failed to make it home by 11 p.m, his mum then obviously started to panic and worry and rang the police. So when she rang the police, she obviously described her son and said what he was wearing that day, and kind of like a mini search began. With no luck, they carried on the search but were just trying to hope that he would return. But sadly, 4 days later, his body was found around 11:45 a.m. He was found by a businessman in Southfield, Michigan, 12 miles from his house. When this guy actually came across the body, he thought it was a mannequin because it was just like on the side of the laid out in the snow on the side of the road. But upon closer inspection, he actually realised that no, this is a dead child's body. So obviously he rang the police to report what he had found. The forensics team would later discover that Mark's killer had actually sexually assaulted his body and then had bound him before strangling him. An eyewitness actually provided the police with information that his body had been placed there around 9:30 that morning, but nothing was thought of it. Someone just thought someone dumped an object. But obviously it ended up being Mark's body. The next victim was Jill Robinson. She was also 12 years old and she lived in Royal Oak, Michigan, and she actually lived 10 minutes away from where Mark's dead body was found. She disappeared on December the 22nd, 1976. This was just over 10 months since Mark had been murdered. Now, unlike Mark's case, Jill, she actually ran away. She got in an argument, just kind of, if you think about on the scale of what's actually happened, it was a small like domestic argument about chores with her mum. So because of this, she decided to pack a bag and leave. But her mum wasn't too worried, just because with most kids, when they get angry, they're like, oh, I'm gonna pack a bag and go. So when she went, and her mother like fully expected her to return home, but she didn't. On December 23rd, Jill's red bicycle was found behind a shop that was located on Main Street in Royal Oak. Another day passed and there was still no sign of her, and sadly on December the 26th, her snow-covered body was found. It was found along Interstate 75 in Troy, Michigan, and it was actually found outside of the Troy police station, and she was wearing the exact same outfit that she'd left in. The killer had actually blown off half of Jill's face with a 12-gauge shotgun while she was laying on her back. Although it was in the same area, many believed that the cases weren't linked, that they were just 2 separate murders, because in Mark's case he was sexually assaulted as well as he was killed in a different way, and it was also months and months before. Now the third victim is a Christine Please know I apologise. I don't mean to offend anyone. I'm just so bad at pronouncing words. So it says Christine Melek? I don't know. I can't find the right translation. But, so I apologise. But anyway, she was the youngest victim at age 10. She went missing on January the 2nd, 1977, and she lived in Berkeley, Michigan. Witnesses say that they actually saw her alive around 3 p.m. on January the 2nd. She went to a 7-Eleven to grab some sweets and a magazine. Her mother wouldn't actually report her missing till around 6 p.m. that evening. She was missing for 16 days, and her mother, Deborah Ashcroft, actually went on to television to ask for her daughter back and just to plea with the abductor to please let her daughter return safe. And actually her neighborhood, like friends and family, they raised around $700 in hopes that it would be a ransom, so the kidnapper would see that there was a reward and give the child back and then just take the money and let people get on with their lives. This wasn't the case, because on the 19th day that she would have been missing for, her body was found on the side of the road in Franklin Village by a local resident, and just like all the other victims, her body was fully clothed in the clothes that she had left in. The autopsy would show that she was smothered, and she had actually died 24 hours before her body was discovered. So at this point, some people are trying to like see connections and try and come to a conclusion on what happened, who killed who, and if there are any links. And although they were all different causes of death and at different times, each victim had like the same white hair on them, and they thought it would be like dog hair. So they all had the same white hair, as well as all their clothes had been washed and pressed, then put back on them, and then they were laid out by like the side of the road. Obviously, with this news spreading out to the southern parts of Michigan, everyone was like in a complete like frenzy, freaking out. People without children were freaking out, let alone people with children were freaking out. And now a huge police task force were out trying to hunt and find who committed these murders before another child would fall victim to this crime. Sadly, this wasn't the case. There was another victim. His name was Timothy King, and he was 11-year-old from Birmingham, Michigan. Around 8 p.m. on the 16th of March 1977, he had left his house to go to get some sweets from the shop. He took his skateboard with him and headed out. He was the youngest of 4 siblings. The people in the shop said that he did come in to get sweets, but he left through like a side back entrance. An eyewitness said that they saw Timothy be approached by like a tall man with like shaggy hair, and the pair of them actually eventually went into the man's car. While Timothy was abducted, his older brother used to actually go out like each night with a bat and in hopes to find the person that had taken his brother. Timothy's body was actually found 6 days later on the side of a road, and autopsy showed that he had been sexually assaulted with an object and was suffocated 6 hours before his body was found. Once again, the killer had washed and pressed his clothes. He was also found with fried chicken in his stomach and his skateboard. Although these are the 4 main victims that were linked to the Oakland County Child Killer, there were another 2 suspected victims. And there was a girl called Cynthia. She was 16 and was abducted and bludgeoned to death on January the 15th, 1976. There was another suspected victim was a girl called Jane Allen. She was 14 years old. She was murdered by carbon monoxide poisoning on the 7th of August, and she had caught a ride with a hitchhiker. Her body wasn't actually found on the side of the road. It was found in a river floating down in Ohio on August 11th. The way she died really wasn't in the killer's style, so that's why they kind of ruled hers off as well as Cynthia's murder off, because it just didn't seem like it was his trademark as such. But it hasn't been disproven, and if this killer was on a spree at this time, he easily could have taken these 2 victims or another 20 victims. Police started to build a profile on this killer. They believed that his job meant that he kind of had the freedom to move. He wasn't stuck in an office, and he knew the county very well. Maybe even someone, maybe like a police officer or a doctor that was trusted by children, so he could easily lure them in and then like take them on their way. But yeah, they believed that he could get from A to B, as well as be able to keep the children in his house without raising suspicion. The task force had actually like checked more than 18,000 tips. More than half a dozen people were arrested, and in the process of them checking all these tips with these murders, they actually found out that there was a child pornography ring that was operating. They managed to bust quite a few people doing like really disgusting things unrelated to these murders, but they still managed to catch them due to all these tips that had been given in. The case was dropped in late 1978 due to no major leads, and the killer never struck again, so people just started to get on with their lives. Weeks after Timothy King had been murdered, a Detroit psychiatrist that was working with the task force actually received a letter from someone that claimed to be called Alan, that was scared of their roommate Frank, who was actually the Oakland County Child Killer. Alan spoke about how scared and remorseful he was. He was also saying how he was losing his sanity and even considered suicide due to kind of having his suspicions and for knowing what he knew. He said how he joined Frank on some really like suspicious, dodgy road trips, but was never actually there when Frank done the kidnapping. He said that Frank apparently committed these crimes due to being traumatized for being in the Vietnam War, and due to him being sent out, he wanted kind of revenge on the rich, to say like, you made me go out and kill these innocent children, so now I'm killing the innocent children like in your back garden as such. Alan said that he was willing to provide information against Frank as long as he was promised immunity from prosecution. The next suspect was Archibald Sloan. Once again, I can't pronounce names. Anyway, he was actually a convicted paedophile in the area that was like tormenting and torturing boys for many years before. Hair samples that were taken from his car actually matched the white hair that was found on all the victims, but it didn't actually match his own DNA. With this, he said the reason for maybe this hair matching was because he let convicted, like known paedophiles borrow his cars around the time these killings happened. The third prime victim was actually this guy called Chris Bush. Timothy's family actually thought that this guy was in on the case. He had been in custody for child pornography before Timothy was abducted, and he actually committed suicide in November 1978, and there were bloodstains that weren't his that were found in his apartment. But right above where he committed suicide, there was a drawing of a boy that was believed to like the first victim, Mark, and this drawings of this boy screaming, and that was up against his like head when he committed suicide. And also when Arthur committed suicide, there was no more killings that could be tied to the Oakland County Child Killer. Now, I don't really know. I think the second victim, obviously the hair's matching and you're letting your car be borrowed to known paedophiles. They may not act again, but they may act again. You know, it doesn't add up quite right. But yeah, so that's kind of a run through of the Oakland County Child Killer. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Also, comment below any crime cases you would like me to cover. Once again, I do not mean any offence to any of the family, friends, anyone involved in this case or who is affected by this case. I'm just intrigued by crime cases and just would like to educate others on this case. If you have any other suggestions, message me on Instagram. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you guys all had a good new year so far. Be sure to subscribe for the journey. I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.